Take a look at your markets now. Markets in Asia were mixed at the close, with the Nikkei share average ending the session down 0.92%. The Hang Seng Index was up by 0.66%, while the Shanghai Composite Index closed in the red, losing 0.062%. US stocks ended in negative territory on Friday. This as markets took a breather following a week of gains, reflecting mixed corporate earnings and policy signals from President Donald Trump. Despite the dip, all three indices logged weekly gains of nearly 2%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average declined by 0.32%. The S&P 500 lost 0.33%, while the Nasdaq Composite Index fell by 0.5%. Well, the all-share index is weaker today. We see it slipping by 0.6% at 83,790 index point. The rand is trading at 18.54 against the US dollar, 19.48 vis-a-vis the euro, and 23.19 against the British pound. Gold is trading at $2,765 an ounce, while platinum is trading at $946 an ounce, and Brent crude oil is trading at $78.84 a barrel. All right, well, for more on the markets and to unpack them for us, I'm joined by Bastian Teichgreeber. He's the Chief Investment Officer at Prescient. Thank you so much for joining us, Bastian. So this is a big week in terms of monetary policy. We have the US Fed, the European Central Bank, and our very own SAB making a call on rates. What's your expectation for each of these reasons and the why?
Thanks for having me, Michelle. Great to be here. Yeah, definitely big week for financial markets. I guess the two largest central banks and the SAB both delivering their basically outlook on interest rates and setting policy potentially. So what we expect for the Fed, let's start with the most important one potentially, is to interest rates just be kept unchanged. That's on the back of the Fed already has delivered 4 interest rate cuts, and they are now basically acting confident on the back of a strong economy that they can keep interest rates at the current level. So that potentially a little bit of a non-event. And we will then look to the ECB in Europe, where we see 25 bips coming this week on the back of a weaker economy in Europe. So there's still potential for lower interest rates. We actually expect 4 cuts throughout this year. So definitely a lot to look forward to when it comes to developed markets. But I also want to mention, last but not least, the SAB, which is going to hopefully cut interest rates at the end of this week. So we expect a 25 basis point cuts here in South Africa. We've got a wide output gap. So we do think that the SAB is falling behind the Fed in terms of cutting interest rates. And it's time to catch up. And hopefully we see a little bit of that later this week.
Yeah, well, we hope you're right. So President Donald Trump, he continues to shake things up. He had a bit of an issue with Colombia, threatening to impose emergency levies against them of 25%, and they would then go up by 250% if they didn't play game. But it looks as though the Colombians have agreed to take the people that America wanted to deport. But I suppose this shows that American-US policy when it comes to trade is going to be very tricky going forward, very uncertain, and it means that everyone's going to have to be kind of walking on shells.
Yeah, most definitely. So uncertain and political, that's what we're seeing already. Unfortunately, that's what was widely expected, that the political environment out of the United States just becomes more volatile, and we're feeling it. And I mean, using economic strengths for non-economic targets, like now we're speaking immigration or potentially deportations, and you use the economic leverage for that. I mean, that's, I think, a slippery slope, to be honest. It seems to have worked this time, and certainly the United States, especially when dealing with economies like Colombia, have the leverage and the power to push through their will. The question is, what are the long-term implications here? So if you keep on doing that, eventually, other economies will take a more cautious stance on the States, all those partners which we can rely on, and if not, maybe diversify away from the United States. So that's still a long way until we really see that. But right now it remains volatile, I guess, and certainly the Trump administration forceful in terms of pushing through their will.
Yeah, but is it really a long way before we see how that pans out? I mean, what if Trump decides to play this game with the likes of someone like China, who may not be, you know, able or pliable as Colombia has been?
Well, I think we have to keep in mind here that Trump is a businessman after all. So dealing with Colombia is easy for him because his downside risk is limited. Dealing with China is a much tougher task. So what we've seen early last week is that he actually took a cautious stance, mentioning that he actually would prefer to not put any tariffs on China, which highlights the volatility of his stance and the volatility around his views. But it also highlights that we should measure him by his actions and not by his words. So potentially talk is cheap, but what he really delivers remains to be seen.
Yeah, I understand that there have been some developments in the artificial intelligence space, and we know artificial intelligence is the big driver of global markets right now. What's your understanding of what's happened? It's something to do with China, and we know that Donald Trump also announced last week up to $500 billion of investment in AI. What does it all mean, and how has it affected AI stocks?
Yeah, definitely interesting once again. So Project Stargate, that's how Trump and his administration called that move to invest, as you rightly said, $500 billion, and quite incredible sum, into basically a collaboration of Oracle and then basically the OpenAI, so the producers of ChatGPT, so to say, as well as SoftBank, Asian, Japanese technology investor, so to say. And that collaboration is set to create more than 100,000 jobs, all in Texas, America. And the infrastructure designed around that is obviously very, very positive for the whole AI or tech sector in general. So it speaks towards Trump's ability and also willingness to push tech in the United States and to take on China, which are certainly going down the same route. So it remains to be interesting in terms of like what can really be succeeded in this space. But the most important part is that we've seen already over the last couple of months, great jumps in productivity are made possible through artificial intelligence. So there is more to come. And obviously, I mean, markets would react positively to that. So you could see that Oracle itself jumped by 7%, but then also tech-linked companies, AI-linked companies like OpenAI would also jump quite dramatically. So a lot of positive news for the tech sector these days, driven by the Trump administration.
All right, Bastian, that's where we're going to leave it. But thank you so much for your time and insights. That was Bastian Teichgreeber. He's the Chief Investment Officer at Prescient.